Good morning. This is the podcast Ancient Rome Today. In the previous episode, we analyzed the film Gladiator directed by Ridley Scott, focusing on it characters in particular. Today we'll discuss Gladiator II, which was released in 2024. Today we'll focus not only on the historical figures, but also on the events and details. First of all, it's necessary to say that the plot of the second film doesn't accurately reflect historical reality, even though some events and figures are depicted correctly. The film Gladiator II opens with the conquest of Numidia in 200 AD. The real conquest of Numidia, however, took place in 46 BC, 2.5 centuries earlier, in fact. Julius Caesar annexed the Numidian kingdom, transforming it into a Roman province. The protagonist Lucius, who lived in Numidia and was later brought to Rome as a slave and then became a gladiator, is a fictional character. Like Russell Crowe's character, the gladiator interpreted by Paul Mescal is a fictional character who, however, was inspired by real men. One of these is Spartacus, who lived in the 1st century BC. He was a slave who later became a gladiator. Spartacus was famous for organizing a major slave rebellion in history. Now let's switch to the main theme of the film, the battles in the Colosseum. In fact, it would be more correct to call it the Flavian Amphitheater. In the film, the gladiators enter the arena through one of the doors, which is historically correct and wrong at the same time. It's right because gladiators entered an arena this way in other amphitheaters throughout the Roman Empire. As you know, there were dozens, if not hundreds, of amphitheaters scattered across the empire, many of which can still be visited today. It's wrong because the gladiators were lifted using platforms from beneath the arena in the Colosseum specifically. Meanwhile, the doors were used exclusively for spectators. Another important event in the film is a naval battle. Indeed, naval battles took place in the Colosseum at the very beginning of its history. So the main error here concerns the misalignment of the naval battle and the historical period depicted. Note that the events of the film take place at the beginning of the 3rd century, while the last real naval battle was organized in 86 AD, nearly 120 years earlier. Let's move on to the historical figures in Gladiator II. As mentioned in the previous episode, Lucilla, the daughter of Emperor Marcus Aurelia, was assassinated in 182 AD. Obviously, it is historically incorrect to present her at the beginning of the 3rd century in the film. Her second husband, in fact, was the Roman army general named Tiberius Claudius. In the film, her husband is called General Marcus Acacius, interpreted by Pedro Pascal. This is a fictional character who was inspired by the real-life General Tiberius Claudius, Lucilla's second husband. Anyway, the entire plot involving the protagonist Lucius, his mother Lucilla, and her husband Marcus Acatius is fictional. Overall, there are some things that are historically correct in this film. For example, Emperor Caracalla really existed and ruled between 211 and 217 AD, initially with his brother Geta, and then alone. And it's also historically correct that Caracalla killed his brother Geta. Let's recall a similar story that happened almost 1,000 years earlier when Romulus killed his brother Remus. This event marks the beginning of Roman history. As for the character of Macrinius interpreted by Denzel Washington, he is indeed very similar to the real historical figure. He was also involved in the assassination attempt on Emperor Caracalla. Marcus Aurelius Macrinus was a Roman politician and emperor from 217. His reign, however, was short. In June 218, his soldiers clashed with the legions supporting another pretender to the throne, Elagabalus, and were defeated. Macrinus was killed a few days later after the battle. In conclusion, although there are many errors and historical inaccuracies in the film Gladiator II, the director has perfectly represented the atmosphere of imperial Rome. Political intrigues and murders were quite common in ancient Rome. Approximately 70% of Roman emperors were assassinated violently. Moreover, the costumes and setting in the film are also very similar to those of the imperial era. It must be said that this wealth was mainly evident in the imperial and senatorial palaces. In contrast, the plebs lived modestly, sometimes even without access to running water or sewerage. Thank you for your attention.